It's ad break time. I am proud to announce that the Beyond Solitaire podcast is sponsored by Central Michigan University's Center for Learning Through Games and Simulations. On October 1st, they will be launching a new series called Art and System, which will be headed up by Tim Hutchings. The goal of the series is to showcase indie games and to push the boundaries of gaming. The first games to go to crowdfunding will be a revised edition of Liam Burke's Dog Eat Dog, Anna Anthropy's Princess with a Cursed Sword, and Timothy Kleinert's The Mountain Witch. This is a fantastic initiative that I am personally excited to support. Also, if you want to help me keep the lights on over here on the podcast, you can support me at patreon.com/BeyondSolitaire. For now, though, let's get on with the show. Hey, gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire. And this week on the pod, I have a very special guest. This is Gabe Barrett. He is a game designer, he is a podcaster, and he is now a publisher of Best with One games, and he's running Solo Game of the Month. How you doing, Gabe?
Liz, I'm doing well. Really glad to see you. I feel like I'm probably running on a little more gas than you are. You just got back from Gen Con, so I appreciate you talking to me, even though you've got like 4 days of no sleep. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Honestly, I'm not really sure that I am a fully sane person right now. We ran the Orc Stomp also while we were at Gen Con.
Okay.
So
and what is that?
It was Gen Con and a 5K.
Oh, okay. So you were like extra running on fumes, maybe. Well, I appreciate. Although it's funny, I sometimes have my best conversations when I'm tired, and maybe that's just because like
Yeah.
some of the walls come down. It's almost like a replacement for alcohol, maybe. And so maybe we'll have a really good conversation and talk about some things. Maybe you'll reveal some things to your audience that they didn't know before. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I'm an open book. No secret, no scandal, right?
Absolutely.
But I actually brought you on, and I thought to do it because I played Artem's game, Shred of Redemption, which I really, really enjoyed. And it got me going down the Solo Game of the Month rabbit hole. So how long has this been going? I feel like completely remiss and like not having paid enough attention to this. As a solo gamer, I should be ashamed. So tell me about this project.
I think that's actually more of an indictment of my marketing or lack thereof. I need to be better about getting the word out. And that's the thing in publishing. Marketing is like 96% of it, I think, at this point, because it's just so hard to stand out. But so Solo Game of the Month, something I started in January of last year, January of 2024. And the premise was very simple in a very kind of like button shy model. It's like, hey, could we do a game every month that was aimed at exclusively the solo gaming community? So every game is a solo game. It might have a 2-player variant or something like that, but it's going to play best with one, hence the name of my company. And could we do it every month? And could we put it in a small box? I love the button shy model, but 18 cards is so limiting, and also limiting from a business perspective. There's not any margin on an 18 card game. There's very little margin on the $20-ish solo games that I sell. And so, trying to figure out the way to do it financially, but also production wise. Like there's so many things that had to come together to be figured out. And yeah, last year we started doing it, and I was like, if I could get 300 or 400 backers a month, I think I can make this work, maybe. And now we're getting like 1,600 backers a month on average. So things are going fairly well. It's really fun bringing these games to life, bringing new designers into the hobby to create solo games for a community that I feel like is underserved. Like there's a lot of solo games, but there's not enough, in my opinion, not enough like really, really good ones. And so I'm excited to continue to bring more of those out.
I mean, that's music to my ears as a solo enthusiast. So one of the things I was wondering as I was looking at Artem's game, which is very robust when I was playing it, which is how far ahead of being the crowdfunded solo game of the month do you start working with a designer? Like, what is the actual behind the scenes process for getting a game to the point where you're ready to crowdfund? And so then what does your pipeline look like?
Yeah, ideally, it would be at least 6 months or so ahead. That way, there's plenty of time to make sure the game is tight and as fun as it can be mechanically and thematically and all that, to get all the art done, the graphic design done, to kind of get everything ready to go to launch a campaign, and then go to print as soon as we can. That's another thing. It's not like, oh, I'm going to run a campaign and I'll deliver the game next year. It's like, no, we're trying to get it to you in 3 or 4 months, if not faster. And so to do that effectively, you got to have everything pretty much done. When I launch a campaign, the game's like 99% there. It might need a little bit more balancing here and there, or changing a 3 to a 2 or something like that. But for the most part, the game is done, the art is done, the graphic design is done, and let's go. And because I got another one coming next month, right? So I can't get too many behind. And unfortunately, right now, there's been such an overcapacity issue in China that I'm a few games behind where I need to be or where I want to be, just because of all the tariff shenanigans. Publishers were like, "Hey, let's go ahead and publish or print everything in May that we need for the rest of the year and even 2026." And so in May, when there was the tariff pause up until August, early August, every publisher and their grandmother was like, "Let's print our games now." And so right at the moment, I'm waiting on several games just to like go through the factory that I'm just sitting on G waiting on O. And it's frustrating for me. It's frustrating for backers. Uh, but in a normal, like perfect world, several months ahead of time, make sure everything has, enough time to get done. At the same time, there's been a couple where it was like the night of the campaign, like the night before, I'm sitting there like printing out cards and like putting it all together and filming a video. I remember Curse Castle was one of those where everything came together later, much later than I would like. And it was literally, let's see, probably 8 o'clock in the morning when I uploaded the final video for the campaign page and then launched like an hour and a half later or something like that. And so I try not to do that where I just don't sleep at all. But yeah, sometimes it's about the seat of our pants. But for the most part, we try to like we like to have enough time to make sure everything is as good as it can be. But
Are you currently scouting the designers that you work with, or are you having people come to you?
so it's a little bit of both. Like Night Moves, I reached out to Joe Slack. I said, "Hey man, I really want to make a puzzle game, like a specific puzzle type of game." And he's one of my favorite designers. He's a friend. We've chatted a lot on my podcast. I've been part of his summits for game design and things like that. And so I knew he would be great to work with. So I reached out to him and said, "Hey, you know, here's the game I'm looking for. Do you want to design it?" And so that worked out really, really well. Some of the games are mine, which is really helpful. I don't have to go anywhere; just have to be inside my own head. And then other designers, a lot of them have come to me and said, "Hey, I've got a game. I've got a Google form on my website where people can submit a game, can submit a video, sell sheet, all that good stuff." And it's been great to see designers just say, "Hey, I see the model that you're working with," because I think that's another thing that's kind of helpful. Here are the constraints, right? It has to fit inside this box. It has to fit inside this MSRP. It has to fit inside, all these different things, and to like get in that zone as a designer and go, okay, how do I overcome these challenges? And like Artem did, like that's a really, really interesting game that only takes 15 minutes to play. And it's got all
Yeah.
these like really fun components in the art. It's got a lot of opportunity for great art. That's another thing. It's like, I want the game to look amazing on the table, just from a marketing standpoint and gameplay standpoint. And so, yeah, a lot of people are reaching out now and saying, "Hey, I've got this idea," and like I just signed a game a couple days ago that's going to come out, sometime soon. And it's kind of like the old school Spy Hunter video game. Remember the
Ooh.
car you're driving around? And so it's a very interesting way to take that video game idea and then turn it into a board game in a small box that costs $20-ish. And so yeah, it's a little bit of both, a little bit of everything. And anyone listening that's designing a solo game, go to bestwith1.com and find the form and submit it, because I'd love to see it, because I do 12 of these a year. Right, so there's plenty of opportunities to bring your game to life.
So you mentioned the constraints. What are the constraints for a solo game of the month? What makes a good entry into your series?
Got a box right over here next to me. So this is Hunted, Kobayashi Tower, one of my games. This is the first game in the Solo Game of the Month series, and you'll notice it's in a VHS style plastic case. Now, we don't use the VHS anymore. I can talk about why we did this. This is actually one of the reasons Solo Game of the Month exists, right? Without this, it wouldn't be a thing at all. But it's got to fit in a box that's this size. So even though I'm not using plastic anymore, I'm using normal chipboard, it's still the same size box, right?
Right.
And so you can fit, I want to say, volume wise, it's like 150 cards. Like there's basically three sections. You could put 50 poker sized cards. And so if you've got a bunch of dice, okay, well then we can't have as many cards, right? So you're messing with your components to kind of get them to fit inside of here. And then dice are really helpful because they add more differentiating factors, right? I can have 6 sides on a die. I can only have 2 sides on a card. And so I can have some interesting things going on as far as randomness and changing the gameplay up, but also just getting more per single component. And Uh, that's really the main constraint. Like anything else is possible as long as it fits in this box, and I can do. And it doesn't have and it's not like 300 pieces of art, which just make it kind of hard to make money when on a small box game. But um, yeah, the box size is the main thing, and then getting it done in a timely fashion, which is always a struggle. So
So speaking of art, do you have artists that you're working with regularly who are just kind of on your rotation as games come through, or are you working with different artists for these games?
yeah, so originally I was working with a bunch of different ones. People I would find online through ArtStation. Those are my main places to find people, and then just reaching out to people that have already done art in the gaming community. They understand it's different finding some random artist who's really good versus finding an artist who has done this a lot before. Just different things about the board gaming space that if you haven't done it before, you might not understand. So I was just kind of reaching out, and that was taking a lot of time. And I was doing a lot of art direction and project management, and I was like, man, this is because you find an artist you love, and you reach out to them, and the schedule works out, and the money works out, and then something just falls through. And you're like, okay, well, I need this game like 6 weeks from now. It's got to be done. And so now I've got a guy named Cole Monroe Chitty who has done art for at least 5 or 6, and then more games coming. And he's just great to work with. He gets things done. That's one thing. Another thing, artists, they're like game designers. It's like kind of nebulous sometimes when something's going to be finished. And finding an artist that is disciplined and gets things done is just like finding gold. And so, yeah, working a lot with Cole right now. He did the art for Artem's game, Shredder Redemption. Did the art for Dice Mancy, Paranormal. He's doing the art for the car game. I just mentioned the Spy Hunter game. Really excited that one it's going to look great on the table. So yeah, right now I kind of like Cole a lot, and the games he's doing art for are selling well. So obviously other people like it too, and that's always something to think about. It's managing timelines and costs and schedules and all that kind of thing, but also it's got to look really good so people buy it, because that's one thing I learned about crowdfunding. People aren't buying the game; they're buying the idea of the game because they can't play it. Now, if you can go to a convention, you can sit down with people who are like, yeah, we're going to crowdfund this next year or whatever, and you could play the game. Okay, that's different. But for the most part, 99% of people at a crowdfunding campaign thinking about backing it, they're just backing it based on concept, idea. Do I think I would like this? Would my gaming group like this? Would I enjoy this game? Well, the visual is a huge, huge part of that. And so, finding games that or creating games that look really good. And at Leader Games, y'all know that. I mean, y'all's games look amazing, and you've got a very specific art style, and you use the same artists, a lot for a lot of different things. And I think I've learned a
Yes.
lot from y'all in that fact of like, okay, you can use the same artist or at least a similar art style across multiple games and multiple different genres and different types of games, different themes, and people will look at that and go, I know that's a Leader game. Well, in the same way, I'm getting to a point. It's like I want people to know, oh, that's the best with one game. You can look at the cover and you can know that. And I think it's smart, and it saves you a lot of time. And it's helpful to the artist to know, hey, every month I got work for you. Right? Got to figure out your bills. So.
That is good. So, what have you learned and over the course of the past, like I guess now year and a half doing this? What has changed about your process, and what are you thinking about tweaking going forward?
Yeah. So one thing I added was a rulebook editor. For a long time, I was editing the rulebooks. Either I was writing them entirely, or the designer was writing them, and I was editing them. And I've got a degree in English and creative writing. It's like I've got a pretty good background. I've done it a lot. It just takes so much time, and so finding someone who does that as their focus, and also someone who is proficient in graphic design, to where not only are they editing the text, but they're also taking the assets and the graphics and the illustrations and putting it all together to make the entire book. That was a huge change in my process, a huge time saver for me personally. Obviously, more money being spent, but money well spent, right? Because if people can't read the rulebook and understand the game, they can't play it. And so then you've got just a $24 paperweight sitting there on your table. And so investing in that. Now the downside is that takes extra time, right? That's
Right.
something that's added a little bit of time to the production process. So we've kind of had to figure some ways to kind of speed up other things to make up for that extra time. But that was a huge change. I'm trying to think, just having a lot of other designers in the first year of doing this. Just starting out, a lot of the games were mine. The games that I had either done in the past that I was doing a second edition or like a new version, or games that I designed during COVID that I was like, I got like a huge backlog of these games that I think are pretty good and people, seem to like them, and let's bring them to life. But now this year, like I've only designed one of the games so far. I think I might do a second one. We'll see how that one turns out. I've got a couple later in this year that I can kind of move around depending on how the design process goes. But it might be only 1 out of 12 this year that is one of my games, and that's kind of nice from a time standpoint, and also because there's another game that I've been working on seemingly forever called Robomon that just kind of eats up all of my design bandwidth, and I got to finish that one here, soon, 15 minutes from now, preferably. And so I'm kind of focused a lot on that one. But anyway, in general, it's been cool to work with so many different designers for these games, creating new worlds, new ideas on mechanisms and theme and things like that. And yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. Those are probably the two biggest changes from like early on to now.
How far along are the games you sign? Because if you're on a tight timeline, that also means that there's less time for playtesting. How much development can you feasibly do if you're trying to put out a game every single month? Like, how do those considerations play in?
Yeah, it's definitely that's a good point. It really the schedule changes based on the game. So I've I've there's been situations where like Artem, he brought me that game and it was basically done because he had been working on it for a long time. It had been with another publisher and things had kind of fallen through and didn't work out. And so when he reached out to me, there wasn't like a lot to do, from a balancing standpoint or from a playtesting standpoint. He had already done a lot of it, pretty much all you needed. Now we did some more and we made some tweaks here and there. We changed some wording and some different things like that. But the game, I mean, when I signed that game, I literally could have gone to Game Found like 3 or 4 weeks later, just as long as the amount of time it took to do the art was really the only time I needed before
Right.
that game was ready to go. Now there's been other games I've signed that took 6 or 8 months to get to a place where it was like, okay, this game's ready. So the schedule kind of adapts to the game and where it is. It's not something I'm flying in the seat of my pants of like, okay, well, I got to get a game tomorrow. Like this year, I've already got the calendar set up through the end of December, right? So all of
Nice.
2025 was planned, and really since like March or April, the whole year has been done. Now, the good thing about that is there's flexibility. So let's say something does happen. A designer reaches out and they're like, hey, by the way, I was doing a playtest last night and I just realized my entire game is broken and we got to start over. Okay, well, I've got enough games in the pipeline to move some things around
Right.
where, okay, you need an extra month or two. No worries. Let me just shift some stuff around and we'll put you in December instead of October or something like that, right? So, having a big pipeline makes things like that easier. And even still, games are coming out way faster than a typical publishing situation. You sign a game today. There's a lot of people that probably signed some games at Gen Con, right? Sat down with the publisher, pitched the game, they signed it.
Yep.
That game's not going to hit Kickstarter or GameFound for at least a year, and then it's probably not going to come out for another year after that. So you signed a game over this past weekend, and 2 years from now, hopefully, if things go well, the game comes out. You sign a game with me, over the last weekend, that game could come out 2 or 3 months from now, depending on where it is, or it could come out in 5 or 6 months. And that's kind of like as late as I want it to go. Maybe a little bit longer, but 6 months out is long enough. And so that's nothing is designers can see their game come to life a lot faster. And there's not that whole like just kind of sitting around waiting on everything to move. And doing 12 a year is another thing. Like most publishers my size are only going to do 1 to 2 games a year because that's smart and not ridiculously stupid, right? They enjoy sleep and they enjoy seeing their families. But this model I'm doing is just it's kind of like all gas no brakes. I'll go all the time, and I love that. We'll see how long I can sustain it. Uh, Figuring that out, but hey, got at least through the end of this year. We'll reassess in 2026. But for right now, I'm really enjoying it.
Absolutely. So, okay, here's a question. The contracts that I've signed for games so far. So basically, I've got games signed. I got nothing out. So yes, I completely understand that you sign it and you just wait. Such as life in a traditional publishing setting. Um, but I also know that eventually my rights revert back to me if there are not continued kind of reprints and profits coming
Yeah.
in. So if you're doing a new game every month, how are you handling the reprint situation, or are you really planning for each game to kind of be a one-off?
So the original plan was just like a limited edition one-off kind of thing. Because again, I was trying to get 300 or 400 backers, and that's not super sustainable to do a whole bunch of reprints and always keep it in print. It just doesn't financially make sense to do that. However, as several of these games have come out and done very well, they sold 1,500 to 2,000 copies in the campaign. And then I always print 100 to 200 extras just in general, just to cover lost or damaged, right? So I want to make sure everybody who bought a game gets a game. And if your game gets lost in the void of international shipping, because every shipment I do is from China, that's another thing that speeds up this process is I ship directly to customers from a fulfillment center right up the road from the factory, right? The factory gets done the next day, almost, sometimes 2 days, it's at the fulfillment center. 2 or 3 days later, they're trying to get it out the door versus the, 3 months sitting on the ocean, sitting at the dock, waiting at the fulfillment center that's been backed up because 17 other Kickstarters showed up at the same time. And we'll get to it eventually. I didn't want to deal with that. Again, I'm trying to get games out as quickly as possible. And so, just trying to speed that up. I kind of went down on a tangent. Remind me your question.
I wonder about reprints.
Reprints, sorry, yes. So what I'm doing now with reprints is if once a game sells out of my, so let me back up. I've got the extras. After everybody gets their game, whatever extras I have left over, so let's say it's 75, 80 copies, 100 copies, whatever, I put them in my GameFound store. So a GameFound store is something that a lot of people don't even know exists, where GameFound allows you to, it's almost like a Shopify page where you can sell games that already exist, right? So it's not just crowdfunding. It's like, hey, here's some cool stuff that I've got if you want it. So I put it in my GameFound store. Once it sells out there, it's kind of like, okay, there's demand, right? People want this thing, and then you start looking at the reviews. How positive were they? Are people talking about the game on Board Game Geek? Are people sending you emails about, hey, I'm looking for this game. Where can I buy it? Are you going to do a reprint? That's when we go, okay, let's do a reprint. So, for instance, this month we got Dice Commandos as the game of the month, but another game from last year called Okinawa, the final battle of World War II, or last battle of World War II. It's been sold out for a few months, and so it's part of this month's campaign as a reprint, as an add-on, or its own reward. Where if you wanted that game, because that game's gotten pretty good reviews, it's up for some awards. Like, okay, cool, let's reprint that one.
Nice.
And so games that need reprints will get reprinted, and for the most part, it's been most of them so far that have been like, okay, we can reprint this one soon-ish, right? And it's about finding the right time. And like Dice Commandos is kind of like, Contra theme game that works really, really well with Okinawa to be in the same campaign. So we try to do things that make sense. If you're a gamer that likes this, you're probably going to like this other thing too. Let's put them in the same campaign for people to be able to purchase both at the same time. But at the same time, going back to your contract question, there's clauses in there that say, hey, the rights come back to you. I don't want anyone to ever feel like they're stuck. That's one thing I made very clear early on to the designers I was signing games from, back last year is, look,
right.
We do a campaign, we sell a bunch of copies. If you need your rights back, just let's talk about it. Let's just figure that out. If you've got a company that comes in like, hey, I want to print, 50,000 copies of your game. One, let them talk to me. Let's figure out a deal where they can sub-license the game, because I've already done the art. I've already done the graphic design. I've already done most of the crappy stuff, like most of the hard things to do as a publisher. And so, I've already got a bunch of localization partners in other countries. I'm trying to get the games in French, in German, in Spanish, in Italian, like all these things. So I'm already doing a lot of the sub-licensing thing. But if you need your rights back for some reason, let me know. Let's work something out. I don't want anyone to ever feel like they're trapped, because I've been there, right? I've been stuck in a contract that I didn't like with a publisher that turned out to just, they decided they didn't actually want to publish my game. It's like, okay, cool. And now I got to start this process over. And, I wish I'd have known that a year and a half ago. I've been there, and I don't want anyone ever to be there with my company, because I know how it feels on the other side. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, so you're mentioning localization in multiple languages. How does that work with a game of the month model? Is it something where you'll be like, oh, and I have the Spanish version of this on a different game's month, or are you like trying to, like, it's also fast?
Yeah, I don't deal with that at all. That is strictly a company in another country. They go, hey, we like this game. Okay, let's figure out a contract. Let's figure out a deal that works. And everybody's happy and everybody's getting paid. The designer of the game and all, everybody's making money. And then it's up to them. I don't care what they do with it at that point. If they want to run, because I've worked with one company that I can't remember the language, but they have basically a Kickstarter type website in their own country that's specific to their language. And so they'll take the game and they'll put it, put their version out on that, and then they'll sell how many copies and whatever. That's fine if they want to. I don't. What I don't do is add language versions on any of my campaigns because it
Right.
slows things down, right? Because translation takes a while. And all of a sudden, now I'm working with a company that I have no way to influence their decisions at all. Like, I can't speed them up. I can't do anything other than, kind of be trapped in something. So I'm never going to, at least right now, I have no plans to combine a language version into one of my campaigns. It's just, there's too many factors that change. Every now and then it might work out where I'm going to print at the same time that a partner is like, hey, our version is ready too. Can we combine printing? And that's going to save us some money on things that are language independent, printing dice and tokens and things like that. Now we can save some money there. But the cost saving, again, we're not talking about 20,000, 50,000 copies. We're talking about 2,000. So the cost savings aren't even that huge or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, very, very conscious of trying not to do anything that's going to slow things down. And waiting on a language would definitely do that. So no thanks.
Fair enough. Okay, so you've got kind of this like game of the month, I guess like subscription model at this point. How many of the people who are backing your games every month are the same people versus new audiences? Like, do you see just like repeat customers that grow a base, or are people just attracted to the specific games?
Yeah, so it's a ton of repeat backers, people that have bought a game, received a game, played it, and go, "Oh, I like this. Okay, this guy, this company, they're making games that I enjoy." At the same time, the games are very different. I try to make them, or at least space out similar games, to the point where if you buy Rome, Fate of an Empire, like that's a heavy game. That's a pretty complicated. The rule book's like 30 something pages. Like it's a beast of a game to learn. Versus Quest over Coffee, where the rule book is like 8 pages and it's kind of sit down, roll some dice, see what happens, for the next 15 minutes. Those are very different games aimed at very different types of players. And so, it's not something where I feel like I want to create a thing where people back it every single month, because that might mean I'm not differentiating enough, right? That might mean I'm not trying new things and taking risks and trying different games and different styles and mechanics and themes and things like that. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who are solo gamers and collectors, right? Who feel like I kind of want all the things because I want to collect all the games of the month, and hopefully I like them all. But if not, there's something bigger going on, and as gamers, we are also collectors. That's just naturally, that's part of it. But yeah, as far as customer base, it is a lot of the same people. I do have a very solid core, right? A group of people. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. I looked at the numbers at the end of last year just to see how many, like what percentage were backing every campaign, and it was high. It was like 15% or something like that. Like it was a substantial number of people, and that backing all of them, right? Let alone the number of people who have backed more than one. That was another really, like percentage wise, really high number, and that's so hard to do. Like if you ask anybody who's run a Kickstarter or GameFound, or who's run another one, like it was a follow up or a second or third campaign, the percentage, if you can hit double digits of like repeat backers, like if you can hit 10% of repeat backers, you are in like the top 1% of companies. Like, it is so hard. Like the average is like 3 or something crazy. It's very, very, very low. Even in a game, like even with a game that's very similar to your original, that's like at the same audience and same crowd and things like that. So
Right.
I am finding a lot of success with people backing, multiple projects. At the same time, finding a lot of new people as well. And part of that is just the marketing and the Facebook ads kind of slowly working their way out into the solo gaming community, and also having the game show up in reviews. Like you did the video for Artem's game. Like that just kind of helps with the reach, and it just takes time. Again, I've only been doing this a year and a half, and so it feels like a lot longer because there's been so many games. There's been 18 games roughly in that amount of
Yeah.
time. But a year and a half for any business is, you're still a toddler. You're still an infant. You've probably not even been able to walk yet from a business standpoint. So I try to keep things in perspective. Is like, okay, it takes time. Like don't worry too much about the numbers. Just make sure you're putting out great the best marketing in the world is a great product. And so that's another thing I think about a lot. It's like, yeah, Facebook ads are excellent, But the more you put out great games, the more people are going to know about your stuff and want to, buy the next one.
So this is a super broad question. I know that. But when you talk about a great product, what to you makes a great solo game?
Oh, that's a good question. So when I'm designing a solo game, I'm thinking in terms of there's three main factors, three main like levers or knobs you can turn, and it's timers, um, threats, and treats. That's my three T's: timers, threats, and treats. So timer, you gotta have something in there that's like pushing the game forward, right? You need the player to feel tension. You don't want them to be able to do all the things that they want to do, right? You gotta have this amount of time and this many things to do, right? Okay, now I gotta prioritize. I gotta figure out what's the most important thing, and there's a little bit of luck involved sometimes, like making the right decision at the right time or the wrong one at the wrong time. And so timers are like push the game forward to a completion. Threats are kind of part of that. A threat can be a timer, but in general, that's the bad guys that you're fighting, or in Pandemic, it's the cubes that are flying around. They're popping up all over the board. Like you've got these things you're like having to focus on, and then there's treats, which can be rewards for the things that you're doing. They could be leveling up. They could be bonuses for clever combos in your cards. Excuse me. But the player needs something that they're getting that little dopamine hit of like, okay, I feel stronger now than I did 30 minutes ago when I started the game. I feel like my character has grown or whatever. And kind of making all those three things work together. Like I said, sometimes a threat is a timer. And sometimes a treat can be on a timer, right? You can mix and match these different things, but that's what I'm thinking about. And so, my game Hunted, I'll give you an example. So you've got this push your luck element with the cards, and it's one of those like if certain icons come out, then the terrorists are going to attack you. And so there's that push your luck element. And so it's not a timer in the sense of like time, it's a timer in the sense of like, okay, I've got another card pool. Do I pull it or do I pass? Right? Do I hide or do I keep going? Right. So that's kind of the tension there, because there's some terrorists in there and some events and things are going to happen. They're going to attack me. But there's also a shotgun. There's also a rocket launcher. There's like also some really cool stuff in that deck that I'm trying to get to. And so it's that tension of like, what do I do? And I'm trying to manage all of that while making my way up the tower to rescue my wife at the end and defeat the boss. Right. And so all that kind of works together. And so that's going to depend on the theme of the game. It's going to depend on kind of how you are wanting to, how you're wanting the player to feel. And that's where I usually start with the game is like, I'm designing based on moments. I'm thinking about these moments in the game that I want the player to feel a certain way. Right. Because when you had that moment in Hunted where you're like, I'm running out of time. My wife is about to, I'm about to lose her. I don't want to draw this card because there's a terrorist out there, but I got to. And you draw it, and it's like the perfect card at the right moment that you needed to help you win the game. It's like, oh, that's a cool moment. Yeah. I love that. Working on Robomon, I've got that same thing right now where there's a boss battle, and it's one of those where like you think you've won, and then the boss transforms, and it's I've seen it in playtesting, and I can't wait for more people to experience this moment where they're like, yeah, I won, and then they turn the page, you're like, crap. That ain't good. It's like the high and then the low. It's like, oh no, and now you get to defeat the thing and try to get that high again. Right? I'm excited for those moments that I'm building into these games. But yeah, timers, threats, and treats are kind of the three things I think about from a design standpoint. Now, from a product standpoint, artwork is a massive one, right? Really evoking the theme and trying to help the player feel like they are that person or that empire or whatever you're doing. Artem's game, going back to that one. Shredder Redemption is not exactly a super thematic playing game. Like, it's very puzzly. It's kind of mechanical in that you're rolling dice and then, you're changing them. You're playing cards and making combo. Like, you're doing some really cool things mentally and puzzly to like, make the game state different. But I don't know that if all those things were just kind of generic, if you would feel like a noble from the Middle Ages trying to overcome a really evil past. Like, I don't know that you would feel that way, but the artwork brings it to life. And you're like, okay, even though this is a mechanical action that I'm doing, the artwork makes me kind of get in this zone of like, I feel like this guy who's trying to overcome his past, because I see him right there and I see the things that he's doing. And so, a game that talking about earlier as far as like the constraints of the game, I want the art to shine through, right? I don't want a game that's just a bunch of tokens that you just kind of spread out 75 tokens on the board and you're just kind of moving them around, like a puzzle. That's fine. But I would much rather have opportunities where we can have a bunch of art on the table. I'm feeling like I'm in this world, I'm in this situation, and now I get to try to win, try to get my way out of it, try to rescue my wife or whatever. I got a game coming up here soon called Storybook Saga, and it's kind of like Smash Bros, where you've got all these different characters from different worlds, but it's all public domain stuff. So it's Winnie the Pooh, it's Peter Pan, it's Alice in Wonderland, it's Robin Hood, it's Steamboat Willie. Like it's all these different characters that you're building this team, and then you're fighting, the enemies from those same worlds. And at its core, it's a dice manipulation game, right? Each character gives you different kinds of dice, and you're rolling them, and you're doing different things, you're triggering combos or whatever. But the art looks so good on the table, and we're using tarot size cards, like the really like the tall cards.
Yes.
And so the art just like is even more artwork taking up space on the table. And so it just looks really good. And the graphic design is excellent. And so yeah, something I always think about as a product creator is, all right, the game's got to be fun. It's got to evoke a certain theme. Mechanics need to kind of intertwine with the theme, as best they can, but it's got to look good. And I think that's one place where a lot of times video games have an advantage, is because you were just like focused in, you were locked into the screen, and you were in that world, right? That verisimilitude of like, I am this character, I'm in this world, and then you're playing. It didn't even got to look good. Like there's plenty of video games that look kind of, not great. Undertale was one I recently got into. Undertale is not a super good looking game, but it's a beloved game, and people like really just get into this world, and so the visual is super important. But anyway, I think I hopefully answered your question.
Yeah, definitely. So it's come up a couple times. I do want to kind of ask it for posterity.
Yeah.
So, we're in a world where tariffs and factory backups stuff kind of making a mess for us. Do you think your business model can survive in the long term with tariffs jumping as they are? Or are you kind of hoping that things stabilize in the future so you can respond?
Well, stability is good just in general, even if it's a high percentage. If you know what it's going to
Yeah.
be, that's been the most frustrating thing. Not so much the percentage as much as the constant change in percentage, right? Let me have the number so I can plan, right? I can figure things out. And if I need to adjust my price, okay. If I need to adjust my margin and I need to figure out a way to cut some costs, okay. But I need the numbers in front of me. It's kind of like it's like playing a board game. Like if you don't have the information, it's hard to make a decision. And so that's been the most frustrating thing. But even when the percent was like 145 or something crazy, like even then I was finding ways to like keep the lights on. It's like, okay, this is gonna be kind of hard, but margin wise, we can make this work. One thing, so although I will say this, the tariffs didn't affect me because I shipped directly to customers. What affected me was
Oh,
they got rid of the de minimis thing,
yeah.
where that effectively allowed you to ship anything directly to a customer as long as it was under, I don't know, $500. It was something, a large number. And so I didn't have to pay
I got you.
anything. However, the Biden administration started killing that in 2024, like middle of 2024, something like that. They started, not, it's kind of funny. Trump gets blamed for all the tariffs, but Biden, there's a lot of stuff he was doing too that if you were paying attention, you should have already had some plans in place when Trump like took things to the next level. And that's kind of what happened with me. Biden started getting rid of de minimis and putting things out there. It's like, hey, this is, we're going to sunset this and we're not going to do it anymore. And so I was already kind of figuring out workarounds, and the fulfillment company I work with in China, they were already working on options and things. And so when things went to DEFCON 17, it wasn't as big of a deal because we had already figured some things out and kind of working through it. And so that was another thing that was kind of helpful. And I'm also not one to panic anyway. It's like, okay, the landscape changed. That's life. I played a lot of football in my life. Okay, the defense is, you thought they were going to be in zone and now they're going to blitz. Okay, let's do an audible real quick. Let's change the play. Let's figure this out. As opposed to a lot of companies that didn't make some good decisions there. And also a lot of companies folded and blamed tariffs when they were bankrupt a year ago anyway. Like that's a lot. Another thing is people blaming the tariffs when their poor business decisions are the reason they were or are where they are. Now, tariffs didn't help. I'm not saying tariffs didn't have a role to play, but if anybody's listening to this and you're thinking about running a crowdfunding campaign or diving into publishing, let me just help you get the lesson without the scar. Run as tight a business as you can. Lower your overhead to nothing. Like right now, this office, this is an apartment above my garage that I converted into my office. I'm not going to go out and rent office space because I'm not on that level, right? Once I get to Leader Games level, I can have a space and I can start hiring some other people. I'm the only full-ish time employee at my company. Everybody else is a freelancer because I don't have the revenue to justify all this stuff, even with a campaign every month. And even like if you look at the numbers, you add it all up, you're like, oh, that's a pretty good bit of money. It's like, no, it's not. It's really not, because shipping is extremely expensive, and taxes, and all the stuff that go into making a game. And so, don't make a bunch of bad decisions because you got a big old chunk of money in the bank and you thought, oh, I made $100,000 on a campaign. I've got $100,000. Like, no, you've got like $35, right? You need to like live like that. And so that's another thing that killed a lot of companies. They blame tariffs, but the real issue was just poor management, just not understanding budgeting, not understanding their per unit cost. That's something else that before I started doing this whole solo game of the month thing, I sat down with a note card. And it's like, I've got to explain what I'm doing on this note card. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And I started writing out each line item for a game. It's like, okay, and I'll give you the numbers, kind of in general. But if I'm going to charge
Sure.
$25 for a campaign and $5 shipping, okay, I've got $30 to work with. Okay, so shipping, or actually Game Found, is going to take this amount of money right off the top. I'm never even going to see it. Okay, gone. Shipping is going to take, on average, this amount of money. Let's add a little bit of buffer to that. That way I don't accidentally screw myself over. Okay, gone. Artwork costs this amount of money on average. Let me turn that into a per unit price. Let's say, just make it easy. It's artwork is $1,000. I'm printing 1,000 copies. Okay, that's $1 per unit that I have to account for. So if I've got $30 to work with, well, now I've got 29, and then the shipping, let's call it 15. Okay, now I'm down to $14, and then I got to pay the designer. Okay, now I'm down that. I've got to pay the graphic designer. Now I'm down that, and I've got to pay myself something. Hopefully, okay, now I'm down that. Like, what is left over it? And if you just break it down from a per unit standpoint, your life gets so much easier, and your decisions get so much easier, right? For instance, if I've got, if I want to reach out to an artist, I'm like, hey, I love your work. Can you do this game? They're like, yeah, it's going to be $15,000. It's like, sorry, I can't spend $15 per unit on my 30. That's half the game, right? You have to
Yeah.
start thinking in those terms. And then decisions get a lot easier. Budgeting gets a lot easier. Knowing how much you make on a campaign. I'm to a point where I can look at the backer count and know exactly how much money I made in profit on that campaign. Almost exactly at this point, because I've done it so many times and kind of have this production pipeline and things like that. And so you just got to get honest with the numbers, right? And don't give your basically you don't have permission to lose money, right? Just kind of like tattoo that on your on your chest and look at it in the mirror every day. Put it above your desk, at your monitor. You don't have permission to lose money. And what does it look like to then make those decisions? And sometimes you're going to lose money because that's business. Um, but you're doing everything you can to make sure you're able to deliver on what people are buying. And that's another thing. I've had people reach out about certain, with all the tariffs and all the craziness and the backups and the slowdowns and things like that. And they've sent me emails like, hey, am I going to get this game? Like they're not sure because other companies have folded, and like, sorry, thank you for your $100
Yeah.
donation. Right. And I understand people are a little worried about that. And you just got to get in the mentality of like, failure is not an option. I've told people, like, if I got to go get another job or a third job to make the money to deliver on what you bought, like, I would do that if I had to. Just because that's how my mind works. Like, I don't want people to buy something and they don't receive it. And so I think you just kind of have to get in that mental state. And unfortunately, a lot of other companies, they got these big booths at Gen Con. They got these big booths at Origins. They spend all this money on travel and all these things. And then a year later, they can't deliver their game because they're out of money. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What were you doing? Like, you didn't belong at Gen Con, right? You should have been working on the game. And so, just thinking through that. And, something that kind of keeps me up at night is like really making sure each dollar is figured out and accounted for, and making sure it's going to the right place, and paying the right people. Because I've had situations where I paid for something and didn't receive what I paid for. It's like, well, that's a loss, and that's frustrating, and just
Yeah.
trying to avoid that as much as possible. But anyway, it's fun. I say that it's kind of down, doom and gloom right there, but it is an enjoyable puzzle to solve. It's my own personal solo game. It's every campaign of figuring out all these different factors and how everything comes together, and all the timers and the threats and the treats. Like, it all comes together in each campaign. And I really enjoy doing it. And yeah, hope to do it for at least a little while longer.
Yeah, seriously, you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But what I wanted to ask was, I know that you're hopefully at this point kind of funding your business off of crowd funds, campaign to campaign. But how much initial startup capital did you need to launch? And how much would you recommend somebody have? Like, can you do this with flies in your wallet, or do you need to have a starting nest egg to make this work?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm a little bit different, a little bit unique because I didn't. This is not how I started. Right, I started publishing games in 2016 with the first edition.
Yeah.
No, I take it back. It was Final Flictier. Was my first game. It was this 4X family weight dexterity game that I really loved. It was a lot of fun to work on, and the kids at my school that I was teaching, they helped me play test it. And it was a lot of fun to work on that project. But then I did the Hunted first edition and got into the solo gaming sphere that way, and that was 20. What year was that? I delivered that one in 2020, like early 2020 was when I delivered that one. And so, when I started solo game of the month, I was kind of starting from second base, where I already had that game. I knew I wanted to do a second edition. The artwork was all done. I think I did 3 or 4 new illustrations. So I was starting from a place of it didn't cost me a whole lot. I'd already built up an email list of a whole bunch of solo gamers. I was already kind of somewhat known in the gaming community in general, just because of the podcast and because of my Facebook group. And so, but if I was going to talk to someone about starting now, starting today, you can get started relatively cheaply, but you are going to have to spend money, right? It's not something you can just like start with nothing because unfortunately, all the big companies that probably don't need crowdfunding are all over crowdfunding, right? The Simons and the game, the companies that have unlimited, well, although Simon maybe shouldn't have had unlimited budgets, they had some financial issues recently, but these big companies with big budgets and great artists and marketing teams and stuff like that, unfortunately, you're competing against them too, right? It's not just us indie publishers going at it. It's also these big, companies that are traded on the stock market, right? You're dealing with them too. And so if you want to stand out, you're gonna have to spend money. You're gonna have to take the risk. You're gonna have to sell some plasma or sell some of your gaming collection. Like you're gonna have to do something to raise some money and have a game that looks really good. It doesn't have to be finished. You don't have to go to crowdfunding with a finished game or anything, but mostly done is preferable. But it's got to look really, really good. Now, I wouldn't spend a bunch of money on videos and all the extra stuff. I wouldn't go out and buy a bunch of business cards or T-shirts. I wouldn't do a bunch of booths at conventions like that. I don't think those things move the needle enough to justify their costs, especially early on. As you get bigger and you're in distribution and you're really trying to like create a brand and get market share, yeah, do those other things. But just starting out, find a good artist that would do it at a good enough price, right? Don't be cheap. You can be cheap, but you're not going to sell games, right? This is a visual art form. Find a good graphic designer. Graphic design might be more important than art in a lot of ways. Really good graphic design can make mediocre art look a lot better. And so that's something else to be aware of. Just find somebody who's really good at designing the graphics and the card layouts and the icons and how everything works together. Because again, if people can't understand the game and the UI, they can't play it. But I would spend money on those two things. And then take some time, right? Really build up an audience, get your pre-launch page up and just start getting people to that page as much as you can, interacting with potential customers as often as you can, and give it some time, right? It's not something like, all right, I got this game idea today and I'm going to launch next month. It'd probably take you 6 months, at least 6 months, maybe 9. Yeah, that's probably my best advice is find people that are really good to work with. They're going to make your game look really, really good. Take plenty of time to market. And also, like I said earlier, the best marketing in the world is a great game. And so, if you're trying to build a company, you need a great game that's going to come out and people go, oh, okay, this is really fun. I'll back the next campaign because I like that one. If you're just trying to do one game, that's not as important. But if you're trying to build a business, then you need to have something that people are going to enjoy. And so make sure your quality is as good as possible. But anyway.
That makes sense. So how does your current work as a publisher interact with other projects that you've done for years? So, for example, the Board Game Design Lab podcast.
Well, the podcast had to go on hiatus. I got to a point where I just had to make some decisions about what makes the most sense. And I love the podcast. I really enjoyed on a weekly basis talking to designers and publishers and people in the industry and getting insight and helping people, learning myself. I learned a great deal personally from those interviews. But I had to just take a step back and go, I can do anything, but I can't do everything. and what makes the most sense financially, what makes the most sense as far as my time and being able to, still be with my kids and hang out with my wife and coach little league baseball. And like, I want to do all these things family wise. And I've got these really cool things I'm working on business wise. And I got these games that I feel like need to be brought to life designer wise. And the podcasting is fun and I enjoy it. But one, it doesn't really generate enough revenue to justify itself compared to some of these other things.
Yeah.
And so, also I'd done over 300 episodes. So it's like, I thought that I still was enjoying it. I still had plenty of stuff I think to say, but I'd also kind of said a lot, maybe not everything, but there are very few topics that I had not covered at this point, right? Every mechanism I could think of, all the themes I can think of, marketing and all the business practice stuff. Like if a designer's getting into the hobby, they've got 400 plus hours of content that they can dive into on the podcast. So it's like I feel pretty good about where it's at. I don't feel like I'm leaving it undone. But then bigger than that, there's things that I've wanted to do. As far as like things at my church and mission trips and different things that like, man, I would really love to do that, but I'm just not in a season right now where I can. And so learning to say
Yeah.
no to good opportunities, right? It's easy to say no to crap you don't care about and things you don't want to do, but learning to say no to things that I am excited about, things that I think, oh, that'd be really cool, that'd be fun, that might be a really good business idea. Saying no to those things, I've learned, is just so valuable, right? Learning to say no to things that are going to disrupt my sleep. I don't get enough of it as it is, and so let's not screw it up even more. And trying to balance all the things, but balance is not like 50-50. It's nothing. It's like, I told my wife a year and a half ago when I was like, all right, I'm going to do this thing and it's going to be kind of crazy. And, unfortunately my schedule now, I usually go to bed around 4:30 in the morning because so much of my time is spent talking back and forth with the factory in China and figuring out
Yeah.
some issue. And, because what I learned was if we're just doing this through email, then you're going to send me an email while you're at work, and then I'm going to get it the next day when I'm at work, and I'm going to respond, and then it's going to be another day, and then you'll respond. Like we were losing days on something that was just kind of like a small issue. And so I just started staying up late. And now, instead of it being an email chain, it's just a messenger conversation back and forth. I've had one
Yeah.
literally 4 o'clock this morning about some cards and like the sizes, like is should it be 44 millimeters or 43? Okay, let's talk through that. And so my schedule is really silly right now, and trying to find ways to make it a little more manageable. But that's just part of it. And you got to have people around you that understand. My kids understand, my wife understands, and but when I'm with them, right? I'm not
Right.
on my phone. I'm not worried about business stuff, unless it's something. If the building's on fire, that's different. But like in general, I try to set up my time to where it's like, okay, here's the block of time where I'm doing this, and here's the block of time where I'm doing that, and I try not to mix them.
Speaking of valuing your time and making sure that you're really present with your business and with your family, I'm taking up about an hour of it. So we will end with a couple of easy questions. The first is, what games have you been playing recently that you're really enjoying, that are doing a lot for you?
Oh, that's a good question. It's so funny. Now most of my time is spent playing prototypes, and games that I'm working on. Like that's seriously the vast majority of the games I play are prototypes and games with my kids. I'm speaking of games with my kids. So Exploding Kittens has I can't remember the name of it. It's like a children's line of games, and it is so good. Like it is just such a good line of games. And so I'm on their test pilot program. So I'm also playing their prototypes, which is great because it like forces me to again sit down and play a game with my kids. And really been enjoying their line of games. They got one that just came out. The name of it eludes me at the moment. But anyway, it's a dice rolling game, and sees like monsters out there, and you're like connecting what you roll on the dice, the cards, and get your play. That was really fun. Exploding Kittens, the board game, came out recently. We've been playing that a lot with my kids. I like it a lot better than the card game, and it allows my kids to gang up on me and make sure that I never not explode, and so they enjoy it immensely. I'm trying to think.
As they should.
Yeah, that's right. I've got a couple friends that we've been going through Pandemic Legacy, the first one, season one,
Yeah.
and you know, it's one of those things where people tell you something's good, and you see it's like the number one game in the world for a long, long time. You're like, okay, but how good is it? It's good. It's really good. So really enjoying that and getting some good ideas from that one on how I can make Robomon just a better experience as well. So that's been research as much as fun. Um, Man, I'm trying to think of any other games. I'm looking around my office. No, no, mostly prototypes. Games that I'm looking forward to releasing soon.
Beautiful. And then if people want to find you, follow your work, where do you like to be found online?
Yeah, so I mean, GameFound is the best place. If you go to GameFound and you just type in "solo game of the month," you will find all of the games in the series so far, and a lot of them are still in late pledge. That's kind of a a good side effect of a lot of the games being kind of stuck at the factory, waiting to go through their production process. Is quite a few games are still in late pledge. So if you're hearing about this for the first time, there's a lot of these games you can still purchase. Um, bestwith1.com is a lot. I've got some of the older games before the series still available for sale there. Got 100 copies of older games. Board Game Design Lab Facebook community is where I spend. If I'm on Facebook, I'm usually there. I don't find a lot of
Yeah.
reason to go to social media right now. It's a bit of a dumpster fire, and so other than the game design stuff that I'm a part of there, but yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to sign up for the email list, you can go to bestwith1.com/month, and you can be part of the newsletter. I send out a monthly newsletter that kind of gives an update about where all the games in the series are and the new game that's coming out, and kind of talk through that. But yeah, those are the best places.
Fantastic. Gabe, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about solo games of the month. I'm really excited to see where this continues to go for as long as you got the energy to do it.
Yeah, Liz, it's been my pleasure. Really appreciate you having me here.
All right, everybody, you can find me anywhere online as Beyond Solitaire. And please like, subscribe, comment, ask questions, and most of all, happy gaming.